Continue on with our history, looking at some of the technology shifts that have happened since this time. In the 1940s, we get also the first digital computer. In 1942, we get the ABC. But think about this. It would take decades before computing would become ubiquitous. It isn't until the 1980s that we're talking about home computing. 1956, we get the original hard drive from IBM. It's about the size of a modern-day refrigerator. But here, too, it isn't until the 90s that we really start to think about storage as being ubiquitous. All of us in this room probably can remember having to delete things because we were out of space, having to decide which version of which document we kept and what we deleted. What do we do today? We just add another terabyte of storage, we move to the cloud, we up our subscription, we continue to store anything and everything that we want, and the explosion of data is upon us. But it would take decades for that to come. I like to say that technology moves very slowly until suddenly it doesn't. And we also see that in our history. In the 1960s, we start to experiment with artificial intelligence. We first see AI starting in the late 50s into the 60s. In 1965, Professor Dreyfus writes a series of academic papers where he compares AI to alchemy and argues that AI can't even play amateur chess, because at the time we were using AI to figure out games of logic like chess. 2 years later, Professor Greenblatt at MIT writes a chess program on a computer with just 16K in memory, challenges Professor Dreyfus to a chess match. You can guess how that ends. Just 2 years after saying, these programs can't even play amateur chess, he loses to one of those programs. So the rate of change, sometimes playing out over decades, and then quickly, suddenly, accelerating until it's upon us. Jumping forward, 1980, AT&T hires McKinsey to come up with their long-run forecast. They want to know, what's cell phone adoption going to be like in 2000? How many cell phone subscriptions will there be 20 years from now? McKinsey crunches the numbers, comes back to AT&T and says, we think 900,000 cell phones by 2000. There's 100 million cell phones in this country in 2000. I want you to remember this the next time somebody in your company says, we should hire McKinsey to help us figure this out. But again, moving slowly until suddenly, quickly, it's upon us. I think it also highlights that the future is uncertain. We're not looking for point estimates. We're looking for a way of understanding how the technology moves so that we can see it before we're blindsided, before we look like the ice harvesters of the late 1800s. Let's move forward to 2000. Up to this point, we're still living a very analog world. 1998, we sell the first digital television, but prior to this, the only mass market digital product is the CD player. Everything else is analog. Even as late as 2000, only 40% of us have home computers in the United States. Only 3% of us are on broadband. We talk about going online because it was a separate activity from what was happening in our daily lives. Text your kids right now and tell them you're going to go online and see what you get back from them. This idea that it was a separate activity, because of course now we're just always online.